Good morning, everyone. This is the uh, tutorial for the health research methodology for the MPH class. So we will be going over the class work we had on Sunday. On Sunday, the 11th. Okay, so we are going to go through those concepts. Today's topic is developing the literature review of the research protocol. We had finished with the introduction to what research is all about. So today we're going to quickly look at developing the research protocol, the research review, literature review. All right, so let's go on to this. We will pick up from here. All right, very good. So this is it. Right, for week 2, we studied yesterday on Sunday, 11th, developing the literature review. I'll go quickly to review this aspect, then have some more detailed work for you. Right, so this slide or the subject we're going to talk about during this tutorial will be introducing the concept of literature review and why conduct the literature review, developing the epidemiological review related to health challenges, contextualizing the theoretical clarification involved in the study, selection of appropriate theories and models to match the research issue raised, the conceptual review as well as the empirical review using the critical analysis method. Then finally, the conceptual framework for the study. Now, all of these are very, very critical, very important in the development of your literature review, because your literature review is the first evidence in the argument that the research is presenting. The researcher has a view, and this view is what the research is about. And the researcher, is going to argue that there is something that he or she has observed that requires an understanding, full understanding. And so there are two evidences the researcher requires to present in order to convince that the view or the position of the researcher is correct. And that is articulating the literature review as the first evidence. And then the second evidence is the data that the researcher is going to collect from the field. And if the research is well articulated, then the first evidence and the second evidence should align. All right, so we're going to look at conceptual alignment of the research process later on. So let's go on quickly. In writing the literature, developing the literature, we have certain protocol to observe. The literature review should start with an introduction, followed by another subheading of epidemiological review, another theoretical review, conceptual review, empirical review, and finally the conceptual framework. The conceptual framework cannot exist before the chapter 2 of the research protocol, because all the resources required for developing the conceptual framework are within the literature review. All right, so any resources that is available for building the conceptual framework is found within the sciences and the scoping review. So these three make up the science that establishes the argument, and the empirical review provides the opportunity to scope the uh, what is known and what is not known about the subject of interest in the study. And then conceptual framework is the blueprint that guides the development and implementation of the entire research protocol. All right, so let's quickly look at the detailed aspect. So introducing the concept of literature review and why conduct the literature review. The literature review provides body of evidence describing the characteristic nature of the problem phenomenon. It is important that the researcher establishes the nature of the problem phenomenon, characterizes the problem phenomenon appropriately using the relevant science to establish the nature of the problem phenomenon, as well as scoping what is known and what is yet to be fully explored about the problem phenomenon. Remembering that the purpose of the research is to provide fuller understanding of any natural phenomenon that is constituting a problem. All right. So the literature review provides the opportunity of doing that. Now, introducing the literature review requires that it starts with a summary of the background to the study and problem statement in not more than, let's say, not more than 300 words. It's just a short review of background to the study and problem statement. And in fact, background to the review to the study and problem statements usually is found in the first chapter. But remember what I told you, that the first chapter is written after the review is established. The literature review is established, and then you begin to construct the chapter one of your research introduction. Now, this particular introduction to the literature review will be suspended at this moment until chapter one is completed. Then you now harness and harvest the information from the background to the study and problem statement to complete the literature review. So we start off with developing the epidemiological review of health-related challenges. Now, we can do that by providing scoping of the magnitude of the health problem involved in the study by specifically identifying what the health-related problem is. So we need to identify what is happening. What is the health-related issue? Is it a disease? If it is a disease, then we can identify the nature of the disease. We can identify what makes the disease a disease by explaining the etiology, explaining the nature of the disease in terms of the pathology briefly, and also identifying how many people are affected. That's the magnitude of the disease or the health-related issue. And then also symptoms definition is required in the epidemiological review, and the pathogenesis briefly, not so deeply, but we need to first of all characterize the disease, identify the at-risk population. In characterizing the disease, we need to use some epidemiological principles of prevalence, quantifying the quantifying the magnitude of the health problem requires that you use the epidemiological principles of epidemiological principles of epidemiological principles of prevalence of the disease, okay, prevalence of the disease and the mortality rates. This will identify the burden of that disease. And so it's important that we do that. And so that's what the epidemiological review did. Then you identify the risk factors involved. The risk factors involved in this condition. These risk factors should be identified as modifiable risk factors and non-modifiable risk factors. The ones that you may need to connect to the next subheading, which is the theoretical review, would be the modifiable risk factors, which the individuals that are at risk of the condition will be either responsible for, and will link the epidemiological review to the theoretical review. Now, if this problem phenomenon is not disease related, it is system related, then at this point, the literature review will begin to shift away from disease focus, population focus to system focus. The system focus will require the what we call the SWOT analysis. The SWOT analysis is a strength of the system. You're going to characterize the system, doing a SWOT analysis of the system, characterizing the system in terms of its strength, its weaknesses, the opportunity the system has to evolve, and then the threat the system is experiencing that constitutes the weakness. Right. So these are the points that you would use when you're writing within the context of the health systems. And at this point, there is a departure from health focus to system focus. All right. So if you're doing a study on, for instance, we are doing a study on out-of-pocket expenditure related to health maintenance, then it's going to be a system focused study, because health expenditure, health financing is usually the system, the health system, or the system, the governance of the state, not the individual, because out of pocket expenditure for individuals will create poverty and will affect the individual family. So at this point, we are doing any system study, there will be a departure. So instead of starting with epidemiological review, you're going to start with the SWOT analysis of that system. And it has policy implication. So you're going to be looking at the policy, the vision of the system, the mission of the system, the objectives of establishing such system, and then policies that are related directly to the actual problem you are reviewing or you are studying. Okay, so I'll just you would have to use the management and administrative principles, including the theories involved. But I'm going to focus my discussion at this point on health-related challenges. So after defining the population at risk and the magnitude of the health-related condition by reporting morbidity and mortality rates, you're going to identify the symptoms. You're going to identify the symptoms related to the disease, and then the risk factors involved. And with this, you'll be able to identify the population may be responsible, and you want to characterize the reason why the population of the at-risk population is experiencing the health-related challenges at this point. So this part links to the next subheading of the literature review, which is contextualizing the theoretical and conceptual clarification involved. So in your write-up, you need to clarify the theoretical context that connects with the risk factors identified in the previous subheading of epidemiological review. So the theories are important here because they provide you opportunity to explain why the problem persists despite the fact that there are effective treatment, because in the previous section of epidemiological review, the symptoms and the treatments must be well established, that there are treatments for such condition. And then if there are effective treatment, then the question is, why is the population still experiencing that health challenge? So it has to do with the individual disposition, which theoretical and conceptual review will clarify what aspect of the individual is deficient that requires strengthening. All right, so that's the function of theoretical review, to identify what aspect of the individual disposition is responsible for sustaining the health related challenges. So theories and models are very important tools in public health research. At this point, these theories and models will provide us with the opportunity to elucidate the likely dynamics of the problem phenomenon related to the individual disposition. Now, they explain human behavior in relation to antecedents to the behavioral outcomes that are responsible for the disease condition. Importantly, these theories and models are systematically organized knowledge applicable in circumstances being investigated. So this is where every research needs to articulate the possible explanation of the dynamics of that problem phenomenon. And usually the dynamics is found in the disposition of the at-risk population. So theoretical review addresses principles and mechanisms. That is why I said it explains why and how. Addresses principles and mechanisms underlying the pathological processes and mechanisms involved in the identified health-related challenges, behavioral determinants, and antecedents associated with likely behavioral risk involved. So this is very important. If you miss this out, then your research will have no head, no direction, and unable to explain whatever data you are collecting regarding the dynamics of the problem phenomenon, which is the most important. So there are three things. You are identifying what the disease is and the risk factors involved, and who is responsible. Is the at-risk population involved responsible? And if the disease is based on modifiable risk factor, then the at-risk population are to be responsible for whatever it is. So if you want to find out what is happening, then we need to examine the at-risk population. And this is where you can do that using the tools, theoretical tools and then conceptual tools that we are going to identify later on. So after writing up, you'll be able to identify what are the predispositions that are responsible for placing these population at risk of the disease. Then the next subheading is a conceptual review, which will come out under the public health principles of prevention and control. So we will need to find out why the at-risk population are not able to protect themselves, because with the public health principles of prevention and control, which runs parallel to the epidemiological principles of the natural history of the disease pathogenesis, conceptual review now provides opportunity to contextualize the disease or the health dynamics, the health related dynamics within the public health paradigm of levels of prevention and modes of intervention. So we may be able to say, okay, the problem lies in the area of primary prevention, and they lack certain personal disposition to cope and protect themselves from being susceptible to the disease. Or they are at the secondary level where they are not, the need for early detection is very, very important. Now, operationalizing the social behavioral concept of health promotion within the model of disease trajectory offered by the model. Now, the various models that we have within the mode of intervention in the level of prevention needs to be explained here. And then after that, we have the next section of the literature review, which is empirical review, providing supporting evidence required for the study based on previous well-designed and executed studies that reveals the gap in knowledge. It is essential that this is conducted very systematically so that we'll be able to scope what is known, scope what is known in the literature, scope what is known, what is partially known, and what is not known at all. Okay, so what is fully known, what is partially known, and what is not known, so that you can now place your research within the domain of what is partially known and what is not known at all. But then what will form the criteria of defining what is known fully and what is partially known? What will form the criteria would be the science that you have used in characterizing the disease entity and the disposition of the at-risk population. That's the epidemiological review, the theoretical review, and the conceptual review forms the criteria to identify what is fully known, what is partially known, and what is not known. And then what does this translate to? When you're characterizing the articles, when you are downloading the articles to reveal the gap, you need to look at articles that have covered the epidemiological characteristics of the disease entity and the at-risk population, the theoretical and conceptual clarification indicated in the journals. So if you don't find any of these, then that means that you need to do a study that is well designed to cover these areas that are missing in the article. So in conducting the literature, the empirical review, we need to address papers or articles that are selected using the systematic review of empirical study methodology. That is another subject of discussion later. Right, so we have done this, we have gone over this very quickly. I want to bring in something else that will help us to clarify what we are doing. Now, we have not talked much about conceptual framework. We have not spoken much about conceptual framework. So I'm going to bring conceptual framework into it, and then let's see how this is developed. Then I'll bring in how conceptual alignment can be achieved. Then I'll show you how the complex conceptual framework that usually comes up. Right, so under conceptual framework, we can see that Like I mentioned in the opening, that conceptual framework is the blueprint, blueprint for your entire research. So blueprints are architectural drawing. If we now traditionally, blueprints are architectural drawing that guides the builders to build complex buildings, skyscrapers, and all that last. So if your work is not conceptualized properly and rooted in deep sciences, public health sciences, then it is weak, superficial, and can be flawed easily. So by doing this, the resources required to construct your conceptual framework comes from the theoretical review, conceptual review, and the epidemiological review. So the development of conceptual framework depends on theories and models. Theories and models provides you with the variables that are relevant in the study. So we have theories and models are very important tools in research because they provide the basis of understanding individual behavior, and those factors, this is important, those factors, these are the antecedents to this behavior, those factors that influence such behavior, enabling implementation, design and implementation of research that can explain the dynamics of the problem phenomenon. Without theories and models, your research cannot explain the dynamics, cannot elucidate the dynamics of the problem phenomenon, which is the main reason for conducting your research, to provide better understanding of what is happening. So when you leave out the theories and models that will help you to explain, then there is no explanation that you can give, right? So the resources required for the construct of the conceptual framework comes from the theories and the principles underpinning the problem phenomena of interest in your study. So if you don't use this science, your work is not grounded. It has no foundation and cannot stand any criticism or argument against it. So theories have been considered as a systematically organized knowledge applicable in a relatively wide variety of circumstances, devised to analyze the situation and is providing the elucidation of the dynamics of the problem, and then predicting the outcome and the relationships within the problem phenomena, and then otherwise explaining the nature of behavior of specified sets of phenomena related to the problem phenomenon that we're trying to right. So while models have been viewed basically as a visual construct of proposed causal linkages among a set of concepts believed to be related to a particular public health problem, we are constructing and needing to show the relationships that exist, and a visualization of the positions of each element of the problem phenomenon, that is the variables that are playing their role in that problem, will aid the explanation that is required. We have two basic explanations: why is the problem occurring and how is it occurring. Without the theories and the models, you cannot do that. Any explanation would be guesswork. Now, another aspect is considering ecological perspective of the problem phenomenon. Using the models in combination or singly can help us to appreciate the context of an ecological perspective, where the various variables are interacting with each other. Okay, because there are determinants. There are determinants to such behavioral issues we are trying to examine. Now, this is a typical conceptual framework. This is the simplest conceptual framework that can be developed to explain and guide the development of the research proceed protocol. Now usually we have this word, the CAP research. Most often CAP research are diagnostic. All right. When you say CAP research, all right, it's a diagnostic procedure to identify the antecedent factors that are connected with the outcome variables. All right. So the CAP usually is knowledge, attitude, and perception. Most often people leave out the perception. Instead of putting perception, they put practice. Actually, the CAP is related to the practice. So the CAP is a tool to characterize the practice, identifying the antecedents to such practice. So it should be knowledge, attitude, and perception. These are the antecedent to the practice which we want to identify. All right. So here we have the ABC conceptual framework. This is the ABC conceptual framework with the antecedent explanatory variable as the A, as the antecedent, that's the event before the behavior. And then we have the behavior, and then we have the consequences. The behavior, the consequences are health outcomes. Okay, I can illustrate this quickly. Antecedent knowledge, antecedent attitudinal disposition of the at-risk population, antecedent perceptions of the at-risk population, including the demography, will precede the risk prevention practice. So the CAT research is a diagnostic research, common for public health research. Okay, so the behavior is the outcome variable. The behavior is the outcome variable, risk prevention or risk practice. So it's either risk prevention or risk practice. So if we're taking, for instance, sexual risk among adolescents, so here will be either risk prevention or risk practice. If we are taking drug use among adolescents, then we can be considering the behavior as risk practice or risk prevention. And then you have the consequences of whatever it is the behavior is, because we usually say in public health, behavior is defined as action or inaction performed by an individual that has far-reaching consequences to the health. So we have the health outcome. If it's risk practice in sexual risk, then we have sexual transmitted infection will be the health outcome and all the consequences associated. If it is drug use, then mental illness and all the other consequences that will come out of this. So we now see the explanatory variables. These are the variables that explain the behavior and the outcome. So these variables are antecedent to this. They explain this, and this risk prevention or practice explains the health outcome. So this is a linear conceptual framework and is the simplest. You may have only two, the explanatory variable and the outcome variable or dependent variable. Or you may have it in this form as primary outcome and secondary outcome if you are able to measure the health outcomes. But if you are not able to measure the health outcome, then you leave this out. Although this will be the what that your study is discussing. What is it that the problem is? This is it. But why is this happening? It's happening because of these two. Okay, so the measurement of these must be very good so that you'll be able to say, because of the low knowledge, inappropriate attitudinal disposition, and inappropriate perception, the behavior of concern is what is. Then you measure the behavior of concern. If the behavior of concern is high, then that will be a reason to conclude that the behavior is the reason for the health outcome. Right. So this is the simplest. We can have more complex, um, what do you call it, conceptual framework. Let me show you this quickly. We have this conceptual framework. This is called the Precede-proceed framework. All right, this is the Precede framework. Meta model is a meta model because all the models are found somewhere here or there. All right, so the held belief is there. The ABC I showed you a moment ago is also within. So this is usually called a meta model. So we have the precede as predisposing, which is this section. It talks about the predisposing factor, the reinforcing factors, the enabling factors, which is here. So these three are the antecedent factor. If you were conducting an intervention, the intervention will be at this point influencing these three factors. So this factor or this meta model or conceptual framework has three factors, three predisposing factors, or three antecedent factors to be considered. And it gives the whole intervention an ecological perspective. Ecological means it takes care of all the possible factors playing role in the dynamics of the problem phenomenon. So you have the predisposing factor will be naturally the personal level disposition of knowledge, all right, attitudinal disposition, all right, and then you have others like perceptions come in under health belief, right? Health belief is very strong with perception, all right? So these are all personal level disposition of the at-risk population. Then the reinforcing would be resources that the at-risk population will require to overcome the problem phenomenon, okay? So we can have encouragement, appraisal offered by either health workers or family members. We can have support from family members and also encouragement from peers. These are the reinforcing factors. So if you're looking at drug use, this is important, very important in drug use. So in drug use, you can include what you call learning, social learning can come here for drug use. You see how we are composing it? So we use what's his name now? We use Bandura's social cognitive theory here. All right, Bandura's social cognitive theory for drug use study. Okay, so drug use study among adolescents. Very good. So for that, this is reinforcing whatever the peers will do. So peer influence is what the SCT, social cognitive theory, is offering in this reinforcing factor. So when peers reinforce their peers to take drugs, this is it. This is where it comes in. Now we have here enabling factor. Enabling factors are usually structural, infrastructural support that the at-risk population may need, and it includes policy. All right, it includes policy that will help the at-risk population. Let me just put it here: policy matter, policy issues, supporting, providing resources, infrastructural resources. All right, resources. Okay, so that is what policy will do. I'll just highlight this to show that this is very important. Okay, very, very important. All right, so policies are all right. So that is it here. Without those reinforcing policy issues, or without those resources, the ability for the at-risk population to get out of this problem will be very, very, very slim. Right. Let me stop here. Um, let me bring another quickly. I want to show you how the complex nature of research is involved and how you can quickly right, this is something that I created to show how we align the conceptual issues involved in the study. Conceptualizing the study, we need to connect all of the to establish the coherence of your argument. So we have here the literature review. First, you see the literature review connects and builds the introduction of your study. So the content of the literature review is summarized in the background to the study and the problem statement, right? So with this, you can go into the methodology. So this is first, this is the methodology, this is the introduction. Now we want to establish links. We want to establish links. So when this is completed, you have resources to ask, raise your research question, and then build your objectives and your hypothesis. Okay, so which comes back to inform the methodology of your study. All right, so the link is this first, and these two are connected. Remember, I said that the background statement, and problem will form the introduction of your literature review. That's why this arrow has two heads. They are connected. So we want to establish an alignment between introduction and the literature review. If you start with the literature review, suspend the introduction of the literature review, write your introduction. When you finish with your introduction, the background to the study and the problem phenomenon is now used to start off the introduction of your literature that establishes the alignment here. Now, with this, you need to bring the research question, which this has already raised here. So the two of them are aligned within here. And then the research question builds into the objective and into the hypothesis. Now, the operationalization of this is within the methodological philosophy, where you are going to select your research design, sample size, instrument design, and analysis. All of these come directly. See the alignment? While this is creating this, this is emphasizing and reinforcing this, giving more details. So this gives rise to this, but this gives more detail to this. At the same time, your result is informed by your objective and hypothesis, because the instrument design will collect the data. All right, so the data you have now is discussed in your discussion section. So while you are discussing, you are also referring back to the problem phenomenon. Okay, so you see how then the literature review is also part of your discussion, because you'll be citing similar work, consequence explanation, okay, here. So this is how you establish what we call conceptual alignment. Okay, so when these are not appropriately aligned, okay, this may result in serious disconnection, all right, predisposing your study to a fatal error in methodology, statistical analysis, and conclusions that may not have significant relevance to the problem phenomena that the study seeks to address. All right. So literature review provides opportunity to explore the over over to explore and overcome the effects of concluding on observation from limited studies. All right. Now, remember that the whole study is a debate. It's a debate. All right. So you don't write your research just like stories. Okay. So we'll stop this, and then we will begin to practice how to do our literature review by downloading some articles and critiquing the articles. I would, in another video, show you how to critique articles, how to do what we call critical analysis of the articles. All right, so this ends our tutorials for today. Thank you so much for being here, and have a wonderful day ahead. Bye-bye.